great athlete from Texas, Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate that introduction. In full disclosure, if you probably remind, I'm a car dealer. I'm a car dealer from Texas. I also played in the Atlanta Braves organization, so I do need to know, along with Congressman Scott, what the name of that stadium is going to be. And thirdly, I am grateful for the banking system. So with that being said, contrary to what some of my colleagues seem to be implying, your two banks are currently being carefully examined by multiple federal agencies. The Federal Reserve and the FDIC are making sure that this new entity will be safe and sound from a regulatory standpoint. The Department of Justice is doing an analysis to ensure that there will still be adequate competition and a healthy financial marketplace for consumers. And as both of you have said, you've held the last two statutory required public hearings to ensure the communities that you will be serving are aware of this potential change. So if my colleagues have complaints about the process of two banks merging, then I would encourage them to change the underlying law rather than publicly criticize your two banks who have been doing everything by the book. On a side note, I just want to say this about minimum wage. Minimum wage is not a career, and we need to remember that. So before we get started here, I wanted to ask each of you the question, starting with you, Mr. Rogers. Are you a socialist or a capitalist?
Representative, I'm a capitalist.
Thank you. Mr. King, are you a socialist or capitalist?
I'm a capitalist.
Thank you for that answer. Now, we've heard all this concern about creating a new mega bank if this pending merger is completed. But if I look at the business models of your two banks compared to some of the GSIBs in the country, they seem to be quite different. We talked about that today. I don't see either of your banks heavily engaged in some of the riskier derivative plays of the bigger Wall Street banks, and you've talked about that. So my question to you, Mr. Rogers, would be, what do you want the identity of this new bank to be?
Representative, thank you for that question. We want the identity of that bank to be very similar to these great histories and the identity of our existing banks, is to be a great Main Street bank who can be a full-service bank. As I said in my opening statements, I started with as a career, so I respect the fact minimum wage is not a career. I started an entry-level position and spent 39 years at the same company, and that company was always built on build your community, you build your bank. We're only going to be as successful as our communities are successful. So we want to make sure that our bank's represented as someone who is a steward and a partner with the communities that we serve.
Okay, and to add to that, so then once you get to that position, are you looking to compete directly with the biggest, most complex financial institutions in the world in the future?
Representative, we're only looking to compete in the markets where we compete. We're not looking to follow them internationally. We're not looking to follow them into esoteric products. But the places where we do compete, the place where we compete on Main Street, we want to be extraordinarily competitive with them.
Okay. On July 10th, the North Carolina Banking Commissioner approved the merger of your two banks. Their office released a statement that 95% of the comments they received during the review process were positive. And I look at that and I think if any of us members on this committee had a 95% satisfactory rate in our districts, we wouldn't have much to worry about. So, Mr. Rogers, how do you plan on building upon the success and continue to working with customers to avoid confusion in the areas where branches may be consolidated, as we've talked a little bit about today?
Well, even with the 95% positive, we want 100%. So of the 5%, we've reached out to all of them individually and collectively to try to address their concerns, to make sure that we're responding to every need from everyone in our communities. Our focus will be on communities. Our focus will not to abandon communities. We've committed to keep branches in rural markets. We've committed to open branches in LMI markets because we'll only be as strong as our communities.
Okay. Mr. King, on page 2 of your testimony, you pledged to invest around $100 million annually into the innovation technology to create a digital client experience that is second to none. Can you briefly elaborate on some of these planned investments and the benefits that they could have for small businesses like mine back in Texas to looking to secure loans?
Well, Representative, there are a number of areas, starting with enhancing our cybersecurity risk mitigation programs, which are already good but need to be increasing every day because the risk is increasing every day. We want to keep you and us safe. Secondly, we want to provide you with the best level of client service quality every day so that when you're dealing with your clients trying to sell cars, we can be there as your partner. We can provide you real-time, immediate support so that we are not the problem in terms of you being able to sell that next car. In order to do that, we're already working on a plan to provide more all-in or total, if you will, services
Gentleman,
to
time has
organizations like
expired.
that.
Appreciate your being here. Thank you.